Darley and his colleagues set up a laboratory experiment to test how the presence of others affects the way an individual interprets an emergency. Students were brought into the lab and asked to view a videotape and record their comments. As the students arrived, they walked past a maintenance worker on a ladder. A few minutes into the videotape, the students heard what sounded like the man falling from the ladder.
Are you all right?
When only one person was present, the sound of the falling worker resulted in an immediate response. The majority of people who were alone in the room attended to the crash. The experimenters then added 2 Confederates. They were instructed to ignore the sound of the worker falling. In this situation, the real subject frequently failed to act. The subject looked to others in the room to interpret what had occurred. The inaction of others communicated to the subject that this was not an emergency. People often take their cues for action from those around them.
Place like this street in New York City, if you were unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or taken ill unexpectedly, you might think that surrounded by all these people, someone would intervene. After all, isn't there safety in numbers? Psychologists say no. Research suggests that often a victim is less likely to receive assistance when surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander. When people are in a crowd, it's easier to pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility. Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passers-by, Peter is an actor. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill.
Help! Help!
How long before he gets help?
Please, somebody. Help! Help me, sir. Please help me.
Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
Please, somebody help me.
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is 2 conflicting rules. One is the rule that we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have effectively a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help. And it's very difficult to rebel.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? Four minutes later, and 34 people have passed without stopping.
Well, people don't really want to know. They just haven't got the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You all right? You all right?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, you look a bit clicky, you know what I mean?
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
Do you want to sit up?
She don't look well, does she?
You all right? Yeah. Sure.
First I thought she was dead. Then I sort of checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her, because there was a bloke sat there just absorbed in reading a newspaper.
This time, Peter's dressed as a respectable gentleman. Now that his dress is in keeping with those around him, how long before he's rescued?
Hello, sir. How are you today?
I'm all right.
6 seconds. She even calls him sir, and suddenly everyone's a good Samaritan.
Do you suffer from epilepsy?
No.
Why you're lying on the floor in the rain?
Because he's part of the right group. Everyone wants to help.
I would just hate to be in his position of feeling ill and nobody helping and walking past, so I'd just like to check that he was okay.
And I thought, well, it's wet, so he must really be ill because he's going to ruin his suit anyway.
But an experiment is not a public opinion poll. It examines behavior under the pressure of social forces, as the experiment of Solomon Asch reveals.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the 5th person with the white T-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2. 2. 2.
2.
2. 3.
3.
3.
3.
But on the 3rd trial, something happens.
2. 2.
2.
2. 2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence. Asch found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1.
1.
They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me.
1.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1.
1.
1.
2. 1. 2. 2. 2.
I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves?
2.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2. 2. 2. 2.
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Asch gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the 3rd position, who also gives the correct response.
1.
1. 2. 1.
2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced. Sometimes we go along with a group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Asch. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
1.
1.
1.
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform. Conformity drops by 2/3. Asch's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase or reduce its occurrence.